There is a specific kind of person that manipulators avoid. Not the paranoid person, not the suspicious person, not the cynic who trusts no one. Those people are easy. They can be worked around, worn down, or eventually seduced by the right performance. The person manipulators avoid is different, quieter, harder to name. They do not radiate defensiveness. They do not scan every interaction for threat. They move through the world with an ease that looks, from the outside, almost naive. But get close to them. Try to run a tactic on them, and something strange happens. The tactic does not land. Not because they saw it coming, because there is nothing inside them for the tactic to grab onto. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how these people are built, and you will understand the specific practices that produce them. Because manipulation resistance is not a personality you are born with. It is an inner architecture, and it can be constructed. Let me start with the mistake most people make when they try to protect themselves. They try to become better at detection. They read the articles. They memorize the red flags. They study the tactics. They become vigilant scanners of every new person who enters their life. And it does not work. Not because detection is useless. It has its place. But detection alone is a losing strategy because sophisticated manipulators are better at hiding than you are at scanning. They have been refining their performances since childhood. You have been studying tactics for a few months. The asymmetry is brutal. The people who are truly resistant to manipulation are not the ones with the best radar. They are the ones who are not worth manipulating in the first place. Because manipulation, at its core, is not a random attack. It is a return on investment calculation. The manipulator scans potential targets and asks a silent question. Can I extract what I want from this person at a cost lower than the value I would gain? If the answer is yes, they proceed. If the answer is no, they move on, without you ever knowing they were considering you at all. The goal, therefore, is not to become undetectable to manipulators. It is to become uneconomical. To be the person whose costs of extraction are so high and whose emotional supplies are so unavailable that the manipulator's own instinct tells them to invest their energy elsewhere. This is what functional immunity actually means. Not perfect defense, not perfect awareness. Simply not worth the trouble. Let me show you how it is built. The first pillar of manipulation resistance is a stable relationship with your own inner reality. This is the foundation everything else rests on. Without it, no other technique works. With it, every other technique becomes almost automatic. A stable inner reality means that your sense of what is true, what you saw, what you felt, what you remember, what you value, is not easily moved by external pressure. Most people do not have this. Most people's sense of reality is porous. When someone confidently contradicts them, they wobble. When someone tells them their memory is wrong, they doubt. When someone insists they are overreacting, they wonder if maybe they are. This porousness is not a moral failure. It is the ordinary state of a social species that evolved to defer to consensus. Our ancestors survived by agreeing with the tribe. Disagreement was dangerous. But that ancient wiring is exactly what manipulators exploit. They present themselves as consensus. They speak with certainty. They imply that everyone else agrees with them. They frame your perception as the outlier. And unless your inner reality is stable, you slowly drift toward their version. Building a stable inner reality does not require becoming stubborn or arrogant. It requires practice in one specific skill. Trusting your own perception even when someone contradicts it. This is a muscle. It is trained by exercise. And the exercise is simple, though not easy. When someone tells you something happened differently than you remember, you pause internally, you consult your memory, and you hold on to what you actually remember. You do not have to argue with them. You do not have to convince them. You simply do not abandon your own experience because they insisted. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic. Your sense of reality stops leaking. External pressure stops rewriting your internal record, and you become someone whose perception cannot be easily hijacked. The manipulator senses this within minutes of meeting you. They test it early, usually with a small, low-stakes reality distortion, to see how you respond. If you accept their version over your own, they proceed. If you calmly hold your own version without becoming defensive, they recalibrate their expectations of you downward. You have just failed their audition, which means you have passed yours. The second pillar is emotional self-sufficiency. Every manipulation tactic in existence exploits emotional need. The need to feel special, the need to be validated, the need to be understood, the need to belong, the need to avoid conflict, the need to be seen as good. These needs are not weaknesses. They are the ordinary emotional architecture of being human. But when they are unmet, when they are hungry, unstable, and desperate for external supply, they become entry points that any skilled manipulator can find and exploit. The love bomber finds the person whose need to feel special has been chronically unmet and floods them with the specialness they have been craving. The person who has been emotionally starved for years cannot help but respond to what looks like a feast. The Machiavellian finds the person whose need to be seen as competent has been ignored and offers them the recognition they have been silently longing for. In return, they extract loyalty, favors, and cover. The narcissist finds the person whose need to belong has been repeatedly rejected and offers them a place inside their inner circle, a place that can be revoked at any moment, keeping the person perpetually striving to earn it. Each tactic works because the target's emotional needs are outsourced. Someone else is responsible for meeting them, and whoever holds that responsibility holds the person. The resistant person has done something quiet but transformative. They have taken back the responsibility for meeting their own core emotional needs. Not all of them. Human beings genuinely need connection, real love, real belonging. These cannot be manufactured internally. But there is a specific set of emotional needs that must be met internally, or else they become vulnerabilities. The need to know you are enough without external confirmation. The need to feel your own worth without applause. The need to trust your own judgment without endorsement. The need to sit with your own company without collapsing into anxiety. These are inside jobs, and they must be built through inside practice. Journaling, solitude, reflection. The slow work of getting to know your own inner landscape well enough that you are no longer a stranger to yourself. The deliberate practice of noticing when you are seeking approval and asking yourself whether the approval is a want or a need. Wants are fine. Wants can go unmet without collapse. Needs, when outsourced, become leashes. The manipulation-resistant person has quietly converted most of their needs into wants. They still enjoy compliments, but they do not require them. They still like being included, but they do not depend on it. They still appreciate being understood, but they can survive being misunderstood without disintegration. This transformation is felt by manipulators before it is named. They can sense in the first few conversations whether a person's emotional needs are hungry or fed. A hungry person radiates a specific energy, a slight reaching, a subtle over-eagerness, a small willingness to work for the interaction. A fed person radiates a different energy, calm, complete, not withholding, simply not needing anything from the interaction to feel whole. The manipulator's instincts tell them immediately that the fed person is not the target they are looking for. They will still be pleasant, they may still perform for a moment, but behind their eyes, they have already begun looking past you towards someone easier, which is exactly what you want. The third pillar is slowness. Manipulation tactics rely on speed, fast intimacy, fast decisions, fast escalations, fast emotional bonding. Every tactic we discussed in an earlier video shares this feature. Love bombing compresses months of relationship building into days. Future faking accelerates commitment before evidence is available. Triangulation creates urgency where none is warranted. Darvo overwhelms the target's processing speed with sudden reversal. Speed is the manipulator's oxygen. Slowness is what suffocates them. The resistant person moves through relationships at a deliberate pace, not artificial, not withholding, simply calibrated to reality. They allow trust to build over months, not moments. They observe behavior over multiple contexts before drawing conclusions about character. They wait for the second conversation before assuming they know someone. They wait for the second year before assuming they know someone well. This slowness does not feel like distrust. From the outside, it feels like maturity. From the inside, it feels like presence. The resistant person is not scanning for threats. They are simply not in a hurry to close the distance. And what happens over time is that the people who cannot survive slowness reveal themselves. The manipulator becomes impatient, frustrated. They begin to push, to pressure, to manufacture urgency where none exists. Why won't you commit? Why are you being so cold? Don't you feel what I feel? Why can't you just trust me? These pressures are the mask slipping, because a person who was actually attuned to you would not experience your natural pace as rejection. They would meet you at your speed. They would recognize that trust worth having is trust worth waiting for. The manipulator cannot do this, not because they are impatient people, because their strategy requires speed. Without speed, their tactics do not have time to produce chemical dependency before the target begins to see clearly. Slowness is not passive protection. It is active revelation. It exposes the manipulator to themselves and to you in the natural friction of a pace they cannot sustain. Move slowly, not because you are afraid, because you have nowhere urgent to be. Now, if you have made it this far, you already understand more about manipulation resistance than most people ever will. But there is one more pillar, and it is the most important of all. Because the previous three, stable inner reality, emotional self-sufficiency, and slowness, will protect you from most manipulators most of the time. But there will be moments in your life when the manipulator is unusually skilled, or the situation is unusually loaded, or your defenses are unusually depleted. And in those moments, all three pillars can wobble at once. You need a final layer of protection for those moments. Let me show you what it is. The fourth pillar is the willingness to be wrong about people. This sounds strange. It sounds like a weakness. Most self-help advice tells you to trust your instincts, to believe your gut, to hold your judgments firmly. But manipulation resistance requires the opposite. The truly resistant person is willing to update their assessment of anyone at any time based on new evidence, including evidence that contradicts what they wanted to believe. Most people are not willing to do this. Once they have decided someone is trustworthy, they defend that assessment against contradicting evidence. Once they have invested in a relationship, they minimize signs that the investment was misplaced. Once they have introduced someone to their family, told their friends how great they are, or built a portion of their identity around the relationship, reversing course becomes psychologically expensive. Manipulators know this. They exploit it. They understand that once you have publicly committed to their goodness, you will spend years defending that commitment, even against your own accumulating doubt. This is called sunk cost thinking, and it traps more manipulation victims than any single tactic in existence. The resistant person has developed the specific capacity to override sunk cost thinking when new evidence arrives. They can walk away from a relationship they invested in, an alliance they defended, a person they vouched for, the moment the evidence tells them they were wrong. They do not experience this as failure. They experience it as accuracy, because they have understood something most people have not. Their identity is not tied to being right about people. Their identity is tied to being honest about what they see. If they were wrong yesterday, they update today. The updating is the strength, not the original judgment. This willingness to be wrong is the ultimate defense. Because manipulators depend on your investment in their reputation. Once you have decided they are wonderful, they know you will resist all evidence to the contrary. They can behave badly and you will explain it away. They can betray you and you will minimize the betrayal. They can hurt you repeatedly and you will call it a rough patch. They rely on this. They count on it. It is the foundation of their long-term strategy. The moment they realize you are not invested in being right about them, that you will update your assessment based on their next action, regardless of your previous investment, they lose their most reliable weapon. Because now they have to earn their reputation with you fresh every day. And most manipulators cannot. Sustained performance is exhausting. Sooner or later, they slip. And when they slip, the resistant person notices and adjusts. Not with drama, not with confrontation, just with quiet, clear-eyed recalibration. This person is not who I thought they were. The evidence is now clear. I will act accordingly. That capacity, held privately, exercised consistently, is what makes someone functionally immune. Not because they see through everyone, but because they refuse to keep believing what the evidence has stopped supporting. Let me tie this together with one final observation. The 4 pillars I have described, stable inner reality, emotional self-sufficiency, slowness, and willingness to be wrong, do not require you to become suspicious. They do not require you to close your heart. They do not require you to view the world as a battlefield. In fact, they allow the opposite. Because when you have built these 4 pillars, you can be open to almost anyone. You can extend warmth without fear. You can offer trust in appropriate increments. You can love deeply, connect fully, engage generously. Because you know that if the person turns out to be different than you hoped, you have the internal architecture to notice and adjust without being destroyed. Manipulation resistance is not armor. It is groundedness. The armored person walks through the world braced against attack. They are exhausting to be around, exhausting to themselves and, ironically, still vulnerable, because armor invites focused attempts to pierce it. The grounded person walks through the world open but rooted. Nothing about them is defensive, but nothing about them can be moved off center either. You cannot be knocked over by someone who has taken the time to know exactly where their own weight rests. This is the deepest truth about manipulation resistance. It is not built by studying the enemy. It is built by knowing yourself so thoroughly that no one else can define you, distort you, or destabilize you. The manipulator's power ends where your self-knowledge begins. Every hour you spend genuinely understanding your own values, your own emotional patterns, your own history, your own sense of what a good life looks like, is an hour that makes you fractionally more immune. And fractionally more immune, compounded across years of quiet practice, becomes functionally immune. You will still meet manipulators. You will still occasionally underestimate one. You will still sometimes be surprised. But the pattern of your life will no longer include being trapped, drained, or destroyed by them. They will pass through, be observed, and be released without permanent damage. Because you will be too rooted, too clear, and too complete for them to find a lasting hold. That is what functional immunity actually looks like. Not a life without predators. A life in which predators no longer find you profitable. Let me leave you with this. The work I have described in this video cannot be rushed. It is not a technique you learn in a weekend. It is not a mindset you adopt after watching a video. It is a practice, slow, cumulative, often invisible from the outside. You build stable inner reality, one moment of held perception at a time. You build emotional self-sufficiency, one small act of internal supply at a time. You build slowness, one paced conversation at a time. You build willingness to be wrong, one honest recalibration at a time. None of these single moments feel like transformation. Each of them feels like a small, unremarkable choice. But over years, the compounding is total. You become a person who moves through the world with an ease that manipulators cannot penetrate, not because you have hardened, but because you have simply become someone whose center is your own. And that is worth every hour it takes to build. Because on the far side of this work is a life you have not yet fully imagined. A life in which you can love without dread, trust without dependence, connect without losing yourself, see people clearly without becoming cynical, move through your years without the accumulating damage that manipulation leaves in its wake. That life is available to you. Not tomorrow, not next week, but over time, through practice, it becomes yours. The most protected people in the world are not the most guarded. They are the most grounded. Become one of them. The world will feel different when you do. If this video showed you something you had never seen before, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach the people who need this message most. Subscribe if you want more content that pulls back the curtain on the psychology of protection, self-mastery, and human behavior. And in the comments below, I want to know, which of the 4 pillars do you feel is strongest in your own life? And which one needs the most work? Your honest answer might be exactly what someone else needed to read. In my next video, I'm going to reveal something almost no one talks about: the internal experience of the Dark Triad personality themselves, what it actually feels like from the inside to be one of them. Not to generate sympathy, to generate understanding, because you cannot fully protect yourself from what you cannot fully see. You do not want to miss it. Until then, stay awake, stay aware. And remember, you cannot be manipulated by anyone who no longer holds the map to your inner world. Keep the map yours.